to Tomorrow Never Knows with me, Bob Wilson, and some wind round in the Beatles kingdom. We realized we weren't talking enough Ringo, so we have our friend, author Phil Weathers, joining us tonight to talk all things Richard Starkey. Lend us your ears and we'll give you a show, but before we can give you a show, we have to tell you about our sponsor. Who's our sponsor, you say? That would be Beatles Magazine. Beatles Magazine is a publication with 370 plus million visitors in all their pages, read by thousands of fans around the world every day. Beatles news is updated daily, 24 hours, audio, video, photos, interviews, contests, additional materials, and more. Follow Beatles Magazine, the most complete online coverage, 24 hours a day. And how many days a week, guys?
8 days a week.
8 days a week. 8 days a week it is. So why don't we talk a little bit, Ringo? How you doing, Phil?
I'm doing just fine, Bob. I hope you are.
I'm doing pretty good. And Warren, how are you tonight?
I'm doing fine, Bob. Thank you. How about you?
I'm lovely. I thought I would go through. We haven't talked a lot about Ringo on some of our shows, so we had to rectify that. But I was thinking, it seems I looked up. Yeah, do you know how many songs he had as a Beatle? How many songs on the Beatles records were original releases were officially released by Ringo?
I do not.
I'm going to say 11.
11 it is. So I was going to go through his songs with the Beatles that were on the original albums, not like the bootleg versions and stuff, and talk a little about the songs he did. And then at the end of that, maybe we could each pick our favorite three, starting with 3, which will be the third, the runner-up, number 2, and then our favorite would be number 1. So we'll see how we each pick at the end of talking about the songs a little bit. So I'll name them and discuss them a little, and you guys can each think. You can think and then speak. Usually that's what I try to do anyway. I'm not always successful. And then we could, hash out what we think of these songs. How's that?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
The first one on my list, I thought was purely a Carl Perkins song. But actually, Carl Perkins also did a cover of it. But it was a song that was originally by Blind Lemon Jefferson way back in 1927, which I did not know. I thought it was a Carl Perkins song. Do you guys want to guess what song that is?
Matchbox?
It is Matchbox. Did you know that was a Blind Lemon Jefferson song before today?
I did not. I thought it was Carl Perkins as well.
Yeah, I didn't know either, but it seems that he covered the song, and his cover is where the Beatles probably picked it up. And what do you think of that song, Phil? What do you think of Matchbox?
Well, it's kind of different, but I like it. Every time I hear it, or if I happen to listen to it, I think it's a good song. I like it.
So it's a solid little piece. What do you think of it, Warren?
Well, I think it's a rocking little tune, but not one of his best, in my opinion. But I like it.
Well, it went up to number 17 on the charts, which isn't too shabby. I mean, for a Beatles song in those days, it's almost automatic that it would go way up to the top. But I remember the first time I heard it was on the American release of Something New. How about you guys?
I can't really remember. I can't really remember the first time I heard it. It was probably, at some point when they were. I don't know if it was Ed Sullivan or some show, some television program that they were on where they, played it live. Probably the first time I heard it, actually, before I heard it on record.
Okay. And what about you, Sir Warren?
I probably heard it the same time as you did, Bob.
Yeah, mine was on that record, the American release of Something New, which happens to be my favorite Beatles album of all time, the American release. So remember, as we do these, we're going to pick our top 3. So as you're doing, keep score on your own private little secret scorecards.
Okay.
The next song that I'm bringing up comes all the way back on the White Album. But there's some things about this one I didn't know. Ringo wrote and sang the lead on this one. It was the first song he wrote by himself. But do you guys want to take a guess what year he started writing Don't Pass Me By from the White Album?
I'm going to take a good guess, and I'm going to say 63, 64 era.
Now let's let Phil guess too before we talk about it. What do you think, Phil?
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, no, no. I want both of you to guess before we give the answer. That was fine. But Phil, what do you think?
I'll say 1965.
Wow.
1965. Why did you pick 63, 64, Warren?
I just remember hearing and reading about him writing a song, and I believe it was Don't Pass Me By, and writing as he was watching a country western movie or something like that. And it was back when the Beatles, when he first started playing with the Beatles. So,
Now, Phil, why did you pick 65?
I just felt like it was a time, I guess since Ringo maybe hadn't been with the Beatles, quite as long, I just felt like maybe that gave him a year later, to begin working on writing songs or kind of toying around with the idea.
Okay, it was actually 63, 64 is correct. So Warren was right on it.
There you go.
Correct. When they were on a New Zealand radio station and they mentioned the song and actually, impromptu on the radio show, sang a little bit of it. And the song was then finished by Ringo when they went over to India, which I did not know. Did you guys hear the version he did a couple of years ago, a remake of the song? It was a little more country western. I thought it was really great. Fans can listen to it on YouTube if you go on there. It's like Don't Pass Me By redo. Did you guys hear that?
No, I haven't.
I have. I'll have to check that out.
I think it's worth listening to. I think, both versions are great, but the newer one that he did a couple of years ago was really, really great. So we move on from the White Album, excuse me, to the White Album. Who can tell me the song John wrote as a lullaby for 5-year-old Julian that was sung on the White Album by Ringo?
Goodbye.
The only lullaby I know of that's
Phil was close there. Are you sure it's Goodbye?
Yeah. The only lullaby I know of on the White Album is Good Night.
That's it.
Singing Goodnight to Julian when he was 5 years old. Then John wrote that song for him. I think there's a bootleg version where John's actually singing it. I think I've heard it, but not in a while. Have you guys ever heard that?
I believe I have, yes.
I think I jumped the gun. I was actually thinking of Mary Hopkin and Paul McCartney's Goodbye.
It's an honest mistake any of us can make. I knew you were thinking Goodnight. That one has some orchestration on it. It's an interesting song. What do you guys make of it?
It's okay. It's again, I think it's kind of different. It's kind of different for him, different for the Beatles.
Exactly.
So, kind of an interesting song, interesting take.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It would have been if they were still doing live shows. It'd be a real show closer to play Goodnight. Maybe on his tour, he could pull that one out and close the show with that one.
Well, that had so many different types of songs on it. It kind of fit in, actually.
Yeah, the White Album, and I know many fans just call it the Beatles, but on our show, for our purposes, we're just calling it the White Album because it's the White Album. I know that's not the title in the catalog because people get real picky. So as we're going along, we keep track. We're going to pick our favorite three, right?
Yes.
Yes. Right. 8 days a week.
8 days a week.
8 days a week, Bob. Okay. What was the Beatles cartoon movie?
Yellow Submarine.
And the title track to Yellow Submarine was written primarily by, do you know which Beatle?
I'm going to say Paul McCartney.
That would be correct. And I didn't know until tonight when I was looking it up. I knew he was trying to write a children's record. But does anybody know, I didn't know this before tonight, what the original title to Yellow Submarine was as he was working on it?
No, you got me on that one, Bob.
Me too.
It was the nickname of Jack Ruby, who shot Lee Oswald. They called him this too, but it's probably not who Paul was writing about. It was called Sparky as he wrote it, Sparky.
Sparky.
And in the background of the song, it had Neil Aspinall, Mal Evans, and their chauffeur Alf Bicknell were in the background of Yellow Submarine. So Alf got to be on a Beatles record. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you guys keeping track of these songs and you getting your top 3 in there?
Yes, sir.
I'm getting them.
Okay, who can tell me, as the White Album was going on, Ringo left for a time and he went to Peter Sellers' yacht in Sardinia.
Mm-hmm.
And his experience there led him to write a song. Do you know what song that one is? A clue is he was on the water in the yacht. If you're in a yacht, you'd like to be on the sea, not under the sea.
Yeah, right. In an octopus's garden.
In an octopus's garden with Ringo. Octopus's garden. Made it out. We saw in the footage of Let It Be. We'd been talking about Let It Be. We saw that in those sessions, George was helping Ringo out, writing some of it. It showed up later on Abbey Road. Phil, how would you rate Octopus's Garden?
Well, going back to even what we were talking about a minute ago, Yellow Submarine, Ringo and Octopus's Garden fits right in there. They're feel-good songs, and if you hear them come on the radio, they can certainly put you in a good mood. So I think if you're kind of down and out, those are good songs to help cheer somebody up, I think, and good sing-along, especially Yellow Submarine.
Well, I think Down and Out was a Ringo song, too. Is that why you used that phrase?
No.
It just came to you? Warren, what did you think of Octopus's Garden?
Octopus Garden is one of Ringo's most favorite tunes by most fans. I don't put it as my favorite, but it's a great song, and it does get you up and going every time it comes on. That's for sure.
And I think the background vocals in it were pretty strong, pretty fun to listen to.
I agree.
The lyrics to those songs are, easily rememberable. So you can easily remember if you want to sing along with those.
That's a fun experience for the listener who likes to sing. I concur. Okay, but the next one was actually originally called, and this was from, I think, a quiz we did. The original title of the next song was, as they wrote it, was Badfinger Boogie. Do you know what song that would be? What song was the working title Badfinger Boogie? Because John hurt his forefinger and he was having trouble playing the piano. And they say from that, the group Badfinger would later take their name. What song was it? We know Ringo didn't do it alone. He had to do it with some of his pals. He had a little help from some of his pals. There's a hint.
There's your hint there, Phil.
Yeah, with a little help.
Phil's being attacked by a giant cat. What's happening over there? With a little help from my friends from Sergeant Pepper. What do you guys think of that one? Badfinger Boogie was then became with a little help from my friends. Do you remember the line they took out because they said something was thrown at him in the song? Do you remember that? Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a tune. What was he afraid they would throw at him before he changed? He's made them change the lyric. He said, you'd throw a tomato at me. Ringo didn't want any tomatoes thrown at him the way they used to throw jelly babies.
Yeah. George got hit in the eye by one of them jelly beans.
You didn't throw it, did you, you scamp?
No, I didn't throw it.
You wouldn't cop to it on the show anyway. All right, we'll talk about that later. We'll have to get the Beatle police off the rooftop session to come and talk to you. Okay. So you're keeping your list, right? You're keeping your favorite 3. You're keeping that in mind as we go along?
I'm making a list and checking it twice.
All right. That's what we want to hear. The next song, can you guess it? It's also a Carl, well, not also, the other one they got from Carl Perkins, but it wasn't his song originally. This one was a Carl Perkins song, and it was sung by Ringo. Do you know which one? Rock One Time for Ringo. Or is it Rock with Ringo One Time, one or the other? He says in the song. You'd have to go in the store to buy it because the Beatles were for sale.
Was that I Want to Be Your Man?
Not
No.
yet. That comes later. It's a Carl Perkins number. I
think you need to tune your guitar a little bit there.
Honey, don't say that. Honey, don't. Honey, don't.
Honey, don't. You got it.
There you go. What did you guys think? That was on Beatles 65 in America, and it was on Beatles for Sale over in Europe, across the pond. What did you think of that one, Phil? Do you like Carl Perkins?
I do, and I liked I liked Beatles 65, the U.S. version. So I like Honey Don't. I like that entire record. So Honey Don't would be a favorite.
And didn't George originally call himself Carl Harrison?
I think. Yeah.
And Paul Ramon, I think that was over Carl Perkins. What do you think of that one, Sir Warren?
Not a favorite.
Okay, but keep your top three a secret until the end of the show, from the end of the segment, with a dramatic revealing of our favorite three.
I think it was too simple of a song myself.
I guess it was in his vocal range, and I know he likes country music, so I kind of enjoy it. I don't think it's a greatest song, but I don't think it's a throwaway. I like that one.
I don't think any Beatles songs are throwaway, and I don't think any of Ringo's songs are a throwaway.
You could do a whole show just on the Beatles country. I mean, because they did do kind of a lot of sort of country songs, really. Covers, kind of thing.
That would be an interesting show. We could talk about all the different cowboy songs one time, or cowboyish country songs that they did. I got a piece of art with Rocky Raccoon. Maybe he can put that in here.
I got a few cowboy pieces of art of Ringo, especially since he was the cowboy guy of the group. But they all like cowboys and Western movies. So
Johnny Ringo.
Yeah, that's Johnny Ringo.
I got a good picture of Ringo in a cowboy outfit. Looks really good.
But Phil, you actually have a piece of Warren's art, unlike me. Which piece do you have?
I think I have the one of John Lennon sitting in the chair, kind of lounging in a chair. Is it A Day in the Life, Warren?
Yes, it is. You want to know what, Phil? Who are we talking about today?
Ringo.
Is he in that picture?
He is not.
Wow, I made a mistake, didn't I?
I know when I got it, Warren, talking about that, I know when I got it from you, I looked and looked and looked to see if I could find Ringo.
Yeah, I've got so many people talking to me about that I missed Ringo in that picture.
Well, we made up for it by making him the feature of the show tonight.
It's still a nice piece.
When I get a piece, we could do a show about it. I haven't gotten one yet, but let's get on to the next song.
You got a shirt, Bob.
That's true. I do have a very nice shirt. I actually wore that shirt today. And when I launder it, I don't put it in the dryer to preserve it because it was very nice. I appreciate that shirt.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It has the show logo on it. Thank you very much. But which of you can tell me which song did Ringo sing on the Help soundtrack?
I know this one.
He later re-recorded it, I believe, with Buck Owens of Hee Haw.
Go ahead, Warren.
Hee haw haw haw. Act Naturally.
Yes, Act Naturally from Help. They played that on the Ed Sullivan Show, recorded on August 14th, 1965, broadcast September 12th, 1965, and they even played it at Shea Stadium. What do you guys think of that one? Phil, you're a guest. You tell us what you think first.
Well, I mean, I like that one too. It's kind of upbeat. just kind of fits right in there, kind of as a Ringo song type songs that,
Yeah.
during that period, type songs he performed. So, I like it.
A
I didn't
classic.
realize. Warren, what did you think of it?
I think it's a classic cowboy song.
I didn't realize, and when just playing the records till I was older, how many of his songs were cowboy type songs. It just
Mhm.
eluded me. I didn't realize initially when I listened to the records that Ringo was intentionally doing a lot of country songs until I was listening to an White Album era interview with George Harrison, and he talked about Ringo doing country flavored songs, and that "Don't Pass Me By" sort of had that beat to it. What do you guys think? Did you know that all the time? I didn't realize that right away. It came to me after hearing George say that. What about you, Phil?
Well, I don't know that I really thought that at first. But, when you go back and listen to a lot of them, you certainly pick up on that, a lot of them kind of sound the same and um, have that flavor, have that country flavor to them.
For sure. And what do you think, Warren?
Well, as they were coming out, I didn't realize that. But now that the Beatles aren't around anymore, and I went more and dug into the history of Ringo, um, it doesn't surprise me. He was pretty much a cowboy fan from the very beginning, and he did some cowboy type songs for Rory Storm, if I can recall.
Rory Storm and the Hurricanes.
That's it.
And what goes on with you guys? Rubber Soul, what goes on? Ringo song. They said Ringo, I didn't realize till tonight, got a writing credit on that with John and Paul. What do you guys think of what goes on, Phil?
Um, Again, I think that one's kind of different. It's kind of a different song in a way. Uh, I don't know. It's kind of different. It's kind of odd, but I mean, I can listen to it. But
Okay, that's a ringing endorsement.
there you go.
You can listen. How about you, Warren?
It's okay. I like the Rubber Soul album, so
Yeah.
um, I, I I put it up there. Uh, I like
Can,
it.
can you guys guess from the album Please Please Me, what was the Ringo song? It was
Um,
originally sung by Pete Best at
I
live
know
performances.
I know the answer to this. How about you, Phil?
Go for it, Warren.
Boys.
Boys,
Boys.
what do you think of that song? Phil?
I like it. That's a fast paced tune. That one will get you moving. I like it.
Okay, it's a
Yes,
showstopper. Warren, what do you think?
I love it. I always liked watching the Beatles in concert and Ringo doing that song. It was great.
All right, so we have all thumbs up there for Boys from the Please Please Me album.
Mhm.
Now, can anybody, we're now at the 11th song. One of you mentioned it before. It was written for the Rolling Stones initially while Paul sat in the corner of the room
I want to
while
be a fan.
Jagger and Richards were talking. I want to be your man, as Phil said.
I
Now,
want to be your
Beatles.
lover, baby. I want to be your man.
So what do you think of that one, Phil?
I think the Beatles knocked that one, and Ringo knocked that one out of the park over the Rolling Stones. Um, I certainly like the Beatles version better, and that's another one, that'll get you moving. So I
Okay, so
endorse.
the Beatles versus the Stones. The Beatles came out on top with "I Want to Be Your Man" in the performance.
I think so.
What about you, Sir Warren?
I love this song. It gets me going every time I hear it, and I'm jumping to the beat.
Now, have you guys been keeping track of your favorite three songs? Take a moment and mull it over, and write your answers down, and then we'll have Phil go first because he's our guest, and then Warren, and then I'll tell you which were my favorite three Ringo songs of the 11 he put on the original album releases or on single releases. when they were originally together.
Do you
So
want us to put them in
number
1, 2, and 3 order?
Well,
No,
we'll do three first. Three will be your third favorite. Two
three,
will be
two, one.
up, and number one will be your favorite. So
Okay.
you can tell us three first, and then build up to two, and then build up with the suspense to number one. So we'll give you a couple of seconds to tally your answers. When you're done, please signify by saying Ringo.
I'm done.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out which one is my number one.
Fair enough.
Let's see.
Actually, they're all pretty close.
Yeah, they are. Okay,
Don't
I'm
give
ready.
anything away. Don't give it away. Just pick them first.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so we'll have your third favorite, your second favorite, and then number one, the winner. So, Phil, what came in at number three for you from Ringo's song?
Number 3 is going to be Yellow Submarine.
Why did you pick that little tune?
Well, I just, like I said earlier, I just think it's a kind of a feel-good song, and one you can kind of sing along to, and, just, I don't know. I like that era of music, and I don't know.
Well,
That's it.
we were all kids back in them days, and hearing that tune when you're a kid is great. I think that tune goes for any children out there, any age between 5 and maybe 13, 14. That song's probably on their top list.
Okay, and Phil, what came in at number two for you?
Number 2, I'm going to go with A Little Help from My Friends from Sgt. Pepper.
So Badfinger Boogie.
There
So
you go.
why did you pick, what about that one resonates with you?
Well, I think we all need a little help from our friends at times, and I think the song just has a good meaning to it. It's from the Sgt. Pepper era. It's just a good tune.
Well, those are good reasons. And would you throw a tomato at Ringo?
I don't think so.
Okay. So what came in on the Phil Weathers number one Ringo Beatles song is
It's I Want to Be Your Man.
the rocking I Want to Be Your Man, also covered by the Stones. What about this song that grabs you to make it your favorite Ringo Beatles song?
Well, I've always liked the sort of the fast up tempo tunes of the Beatles. I Want to Be Your Man, Long Tall Sally, Please Mr. Postman, all those type songs. I just love to hear them, and that's one I love to hear.
Okay, so the number one Ringo song from Phil is I Want to Be Your Man, covered by the Stones, and it was a great scene in A Hard Day's Night when Ringo was dancing, and he was dancing to the song I Want to Be Your Man. So, Sir Warren, what came in at number three on your Ringo top three tracks with the Beatles?
Well, I really can't pick a number three.
Splendid, and you're a co-host of the show, and you can't
divided. I'm divided between two songs.
What two are you torn between? We'll give you a number four then. Warren, what comes in at number 4 on your list?
I'm going to say Don't Pass Me By, number 4.
And Don't Pass Me By comes in at number 4. What was it about that song that grabbed you?
I just love the tune. I can just be driving down the road and that song comes to my mind now all the time. So I just love the tune. It's great. A great Ringo tune.
Now that we got number 4 out of the way, what comes in at number 3 on Sir Warren Brown's Ringo list?
Well, I'm going to go with Phil's number 1 for my number 3. And I had a tough time deciding that one and Don't Pass Me By. So they're both uppity beats, in my opinion, and a very good tune.
All right. And Now, what about your number two runner-up to the favorite Ringo Starr with the Beatles song?
My number two has to be Boys.
The
Just
Rollicking Boys from the live shows. Yes. What is it
yeah.
about this that grabs you?
The first time I ever seen the Beatles live, I never seen them in person live, but on video live. That was the first song that I ever seen them play, and that just turned me on to the Beatles that much more. Um, awesome tune.
Now that leads us up to so Warren Brown's number one of four. Warren's the only one of us who had to have four. So, what was your number one Ringo track with the Beatles, Warren?
I get by with a little help from my friends, and that's very true every single day of my life.
All right, so another vote there for with a little help from my friends. Very interesting. Phil, would you like to ask me my favorite three? I only picked three.
Sure, Bob. What are your favorite three Ringo songs?
Well, at number three, I harken back to the album that we refer to as the White Album, and I'll go with Don't Pass Me By. I think it's a strong Ringo track. I also like the redo of it. I think that it grabs you, and it's interesting that it has the lyrics in it that could be taken as a Paul is dead hoax sign. You were in a car crash and you lost your hair. I think that's a pretty wild line. And it was a pretty strong song from their interesting White Album, in my opinion.
Yes.
Good song.
Do you want to ask me my number two?
What is your number two, Bob?
Why, I'll tell you. My number two song comes from the Beatles cartoon movie where they lent their music but not their voices to it. They couldn't be bothered to do the voices for their own movie. But I picked Yellow Submarine because it's such a signature Beatles tune that everybody pretty much would know that song. It stands out. Like you hear that song and you think Ringo and you think Beatles. It just grabs you. And then it also reminds you of the artwork from the movie.
Great choice.
And what was your number one Ringo song, Bob?
My number one favorite Ringo song with the Beatles, formerly referred to as Badfinger Boogie, would be With a Little Help from My Friends. I would throw a tomato at Ringo if it wouldn't hurt him, and they didn't eject me from the stadium. I just think it's a good song. I like the way the background vocals are. I like the way the song is set up. I like the way they do the Billy Shears, and it leads into the next track. I think it's a pretty cool song. It would be my number one favorite Ringo song. So, what do you think? We did a pretty good job with that, I would say.
I think so.
I had fun with it, and we didn't talk enough Ringo until today. A couple of years ago, I was reading a book, and it was by Michael Seth Starr, no relation to Ringo. And he put out a book, and there was some interesting little facts in it. He calls it Ringo with a Little Help. And it came out in 2015. I've asked him onto the show. He might actually come on sometime. It was put out by Backbeat Press. And as I looked over it again, I just took a gander at it. So, they talk about John's childhood, but as a child, Ringo really didn't know his original father. He knew Harry Graves, his stepfather. Did you guys know that? He only saw his real father once.
I did not know that.
And I did know that.
They talk about that so much, but Warren said he heard it until I read this book. I didn't realize he saw his own, natural birth father one time, which actually was later on when he was a bit older. His stepfather's name was Harry Graves, who he called his stepladder, which kind of reminds me of something John would say. Between that and being a sickly child, Ringo didn't have it so easy, so to speak. It don't come easy. But his grandparents lived a couple of doors down, which must have been a help. But I thought that was very interesting that, they always talk about John's childhood, but Ringo's, dad left the family. What do you think of that? Phil?
Well, I read your interview that you did with him. I read over some of that, and
I interviewed Michael Seth Starr, not Ringo. I just want to be clear. But if Ringo's ever up for 5 minutes, I'm here.
I read your interview and sort of your review of the book, and from that, I learned quite a bit, like I said, about his early childhood, and just some of the things that were going on in those early years that I didn't really know.
Yeah, I
So
didn't know he only saw his dad once, but you knew that, Warren?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember where you picked that up?
A long time ago when like I said, I was looking into Ringo a few times way back when, and that's one of the things that I found out about him.
Oh, yeah, I thought that was interesting. I looked this up. I didn't know this off the top of my head, but does anybody want to guess Rory Storm's real name?
I used to know
that,
this.
that I actually read that tonight when I was looking over the interview. It had his real name in there because it talked about Richie, how he used to call himself Richie instead of
Yeah, and they
Ringo.
would spell it Richy without an E, like Richy, like
Yeah,
Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees or Davy Jones with no E.
Yeah, and
I
it
I
mentioned
think I remember his name being Alan or something like that.
That is his first name. We have the first name established. It is Alan. Rory Storm of the Hurricanes. Rory's first name was Alan. Anyone to take a guess at, excuse me, at his last name?
I know this too.
hold on a second and I'll tell you. Alan called
All
Alan
right, Alan Caldwell. That's
There
correct.
you go, Caldwell. That's it.
What did you have that handy? Was that written on a piece of paper or something?
I'm reading over your interview.
Well, we'll let that. Anytime you read over one of my interviews, we let that count. You're allowed to do that. We'll always allow
Hey,
that.
hey,
And
Google's
also,
a good thing to have.
did you know that? And Bob, I'm sure you know this because you wrote it. Did you know that Maureen Cox changed her name?
I
Yes.
did not know that before I looked at this book. Do you have what was her real name? I didn't know this either. What was her real name?
Real name was Mary,
Yes.
and she
Yeah, I
changed
didn't.
to
I had
Maureen.
no idea.
Yeah,
Yep.
I didn't know that.
She thought,
Maureen Cox was born Mary Cox. I didn't know that.
yeah,
Right. She
she thought it was more sophisticated.
she did. That's what it says. She thought it was more worldly and sophisticated, so she changed it.
Yep.
So they all kind of played around with their names.
But Michael Seth Starr's book, Ringo with a Little Help, it's worth looking over, I think. And it had some interesting stuff also on Jimmy Nicol and George. Wanted to wait for Ringo, but in those days when they toured, Jimmy Nicol was the drummer, as you guys know, who
Right.
replaced Ringo on the first world tour because he had tonsillitis. And George didn't want to go without Ringo, but in those days they didn't have insurance on the shows, so if they didn't go, it would have cost everybody like a ton of money. So that the show had to go on, as they say. So Jimmy Nicol joined the Beatles on that first tour. Remember Jimmy Nicol, Phil?
George Harrison was kind of opposed to him going on the tour without Ringo at first, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I guess the money was just so substantial, and they didn't have insurance that they couldn't, cancel a whole tour without, costing a ton of money, and that would be their first huge world tour. So Jimmy Nicol got to go, and then poor Jimmy Nicol, he did a really good job, and then we just didn't hear much from him after that, but he did a great job for those 2 weeks.
Right.
Was also interesting in that book, Ringo. The author goes on, and when we did the interview, he was saying that Ringo had thought the Beatles might have survived as a unit if Paul hadn't quit publicly by putting the printed interview in the McCartney record. I didn't. I was surprised by Ringo saying that. What about you, Phil?
Yeah, I really was too. Because apparently, I don't know, maybe they could have kept recording, but apparently, their relationships at that point were really fractured. So, um, I don't know that, and with John and Yoko and just all of that, I don't know that, I don't know how that could have really continued.
It's an
Uh,
interesting thought, though. Excuse me. It's an interesting thing to think about. But and I know Warren knew this, but George had slept with Ringo's wife Maureen, and in the book it goes on that that sort of
yeah,
put the final nail in the coffin of Ringo's marriage. But Ringo also had been adventurous, let's say, with other women. So that's an interesting little fact that the book hashes out. But we know he's been happily married to Bond girl Barbara Bach for quite some time. And they eat a lot of broccoli, and they're both sober, which is good. But speaking of
Broccoli and beans, Bob.
broccoli and beans, that sounds combustible. Speaking of combustible, Phil, do you have a quiz for us?
I do have some quiz questions about
All
Ringo.
right, let's see how we do. We'll keep a tally, and if we do well, we'll say what the tally is. If not, we'll just end the show by singing the end.
Hey, Bob, can I cut in here for a minute?
Yeah.
Can you tell us where people can find that interview you had with Michael Seth Starr, and where they can...
If you go into Google and you type in Bob Wilson and you put in Live for Live Music Ringo, that'll be one of the choices that comes up. It's an interview I did with Michael Seth Starr, who might come on the show. I contacted him about 2 weeks ago. It's an interesting book, and there was a lot in it about Ringo I didn't know. But if you look on, it's Live for Live Music, and my name Bob Wilson, and if you put in Ringo, that'll be one of the 2 or 3 choices that come up, so you could find it pretty easily with that. But thank you for mentioning that. I like getting a plug once in a while. That was pretty neat.
Yeah,
let's get back to this quiz, because I know Phil came up with some scary questions.
All right, most of these, Bob and Warren, most of these questions are dealing with Ringo's 1973 album that was simply entitled Ringo. If you remember that album.
My favorite solo album.
Well, most of the questions that I have for you are from that album or dealing with that album.
Warren, is your wife in the background so we can count on her?
No, she went to bed, Bob.
Uh-oh, we're in trouble. Okay, lay the first one on us there, Alex Trebek.
Okay, and I've got really the first question is kind of a 2 or 3 part question.
Uh-oh.
All right, Ringo's 1973 LP, Ringo, reached #1 on Cashbox and Record World, which were both, U.S. magazines. What spot did it reach on the Billboard 200?
Warren?
All right, #1 on Cashbox, and it was #1 on Record World. How high did it get on Billboard magazine?
I believe it was a top 10 or a top 5, if I can recall.
I'm going to guess that it came in right ahead of John Lennon's Mind Games album.
Okay, it actually reached #2 on Billboard.
#2, okay.
So it reached 1 on Cashbox, 1 on Record World, and it was #2 on Billboard. And any idea on what album and what artist kept it out of the #1 spot?
I'm going to guess John Lennon.
John Lennon.
Mind Games?
No, it was not.
Okay, that's my guess. So what's your guess, Warren?
1973.
Whatever gets you through the night, maybe, right? That was him with Elton John.
Close. You're close. You're warm.
Walls and Bridges?
You're warm, Bob.
Okay, Warren, I'm leaving it up to you with those clues.
You got me. I would have said Walls and Bridges.
It was actually, the album was entitled Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by
Elton John.
Elton John. Hey, I remember that. Wasn't Lennon a part of that?
I think the Beach Boys were saying vocals on it. I don't know about John. Maybe. Well, let the experts in the audience look that one up. Send your emails to Warren Brown, courtesy of Messenger on Facebook.
This next question, again, goes along with Ringo's album, 73.
That was a good question, Phil. I like that question. It was tough.
All right, here, I'm going to give you a couple of potential answers at the end of this question.
No tough.
All right, the cover of that album, if you can recall it, was somewhat similar to Sgt. Pepper. It had featured a painting that showed Ringo like on a stage, and behind him a cast of characters in the balcony. Mm-hmm. All right, who was the individual that painted that particular picture? Was it A, Jim Keltner, B, Mal Evans, C, Tim Bruckner, or D, Klaus Vormann?
I'll give that to Warren because he's the artist.
Repeat that one more time.
All right, A, Jim Keltner, B, Mal Evans, C, Tim Bruckner, or D, Klaus Vormann?
Klaus was on the album. I don't think he did the artwork, though.
Okay.
I'd guess Mal Evans, but I'm
You
guessing.
say Mal Evans, you say B, Bob.
I would go with Mal, but I'm guessing.
I'll agree with him.
Okay, you both say B, Mal Evans. Actually, it was C, Tim Bruckner did the painting.
Who's
Okay.
Tim Bruckner? I'm not sure who that is.
I don't know who it is.
Warren Klaus Vormann was on the cover. He was one of the cast of characters.
Right.
So he was pictured on the cover.
Right.
Well, these are tough questions, Phil.
Ringo was the eye in Ringo on the stage.
Right. Okay, you ready for another one?
No, those were hard. Okay, ask another though.
Again, has to do with that 1973 album cover. All right. On that cover, you may not remember. I should have forewarned you guys to check out the cover.
Yeah, that would have helped.
Okay, another sort of multiple choice question here. On that album cover, the Ringo album cover, is there's a picture of an animal that's holding a newspaper, reading a newspaper, and it has the headline, Ringo, it's a hit. Is it a horse, A, B, a deer, or C, a bear? A horse, B, a deer, or C, a bear? And I'm not making this up.
A beer.
A deer, B, says Bob.
I say a beer. I don't know. I can't. Now, later when we have the video up, Warren's going to have a picture of the album cover there.
There you go.
I'd be completely guessing. What do you say, Warren?
I have no clue. I'm going to go with you, Bob.
You say
a beer.
Actually, it's a bear.
Well, that was close. We'll get credit for that. Yay!
No, I don't see it myself.
I warn you guys to check out that album cover.
Right.
All right, there were actually three singles that came off of that 1973 album. Which single from the album did better on the U.S. charts? Was it Photograph or You're 16? Bob?
You're 16 was a pretty big hit at that time.
Yes, it
Photograph is a legendary song because he wrote it with George, but You're 16 was all over the place, so I would go with that.
I'm going to agree with that.
Okay. It's a good guess. Actually, you were both correct in a way because both of them hit number one.
So it's a tie.
It's kind of a tie. Both of them made number one.
We had two number one hits from an album.
Do you know what the name of this is not a question, but do you know what the third single was that was released from that album?
I got it. Now I'm like all thrown off because of the album cover question.
Oh my. Oh my.
Warren, way to go. That's it.
Can you boogie if you try?
Excellent. Thank goodness.
Now I know you're going to get this one.
Don't jinx us.
After those singles that we just talked about, You're 16, Photograph, Oh My, after those singles became hits, one of the Beatles sent Ringo a telegram, and it said, "Congratulations, how dare you, and please write me a song." Was it
I'm going to guess John.
John? Bob says John.
Here.
Warren?
I'm going to say John Lennon.
It was John.
Yes, I remember that.
Right song, John Lennon.
Mhm.
Okay, I got a couple of movie questions.
These were great. Man, they're all about the Ringo album, which I love, but I didn't play it this week or anything, so you really have me stressed there. All right, what's the next one?
I put that album as #1 for Ringo for me.
Yeah, it got a lot of good reviews, a lot of good songs, and of course all the Beatles, were featured on that at some point.
Yep.
That makes it neat too.
You got "I'm the Greatest." I believe John Lennon wrote that.
I think that was on the next album, wasn't it?
No, it was on this one. It was on the
Yes, it was.
album.
Oh, Goodnight Vienna was the next one, right?
Right.
Okay, I got
And
you.
then you got "Photograph," which was George Harrison and Richard Starkey. And then you got "6 O'Clock," which was Paul and Linda McCartney. You got "You and Me, Babe," with Harrison and Mal Evans. Yeah, they were all on there at one point.
Very good Ringo song list. What's the next question?
I got two more questions for you.
Uh-oh.
They're both dealing with movies. We talked about earlier with Bob. You talked about some of the country western influence of the Beatles, and in the spaghetti western, Ringo Starr played Candy, a Mexican bandit. Do you know what movie that was?
Do 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 do.
Bandit. A western spaghetti film that Ringo played in.
He was in the Magic Christian. I thought the name of the movie was Candy.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't This one wasn't Candy.
There was one called 200 Miles with Frank Zappa, right? And then there was one called, if I can say it correctly, Listomania.
Right. This one was called Blind Man.
Blind Man. I did not know this.
Yeah, I had no clue on that one.
I was listening to this movie tonight, and I didn't see that. I didn't see that.
Times, and it's kind of like a Clint Eastwood, one of those early Clint Eastwood movies. All right, Bob, you just mentioned this a minute ago. This one you should get. The first movie, other than a Beatle movie that Ringo played in, what was it called?
You're killing me today. The Magic Christian would be his first one because the Beatles were still together, I think.
Yeah. I said Starr played a Mexican bandit named what? In the other movie. This movie was the first movie. It also had like Richard Burton in it.
So would this be Candy?
Candy, that's it.
So tricky because the last question had that name in it too. All right. Some hard ones tonight, Phil. Thank you.
Yes, he is.
All right, that's all the questions I've got, guys.
Well, that was fun. And we got some Ringo in there, so we finally made up for not mentioning Ringo enough. So tell us where fans can find your book, Phil.
Well, right now, I just have them available through like Facebook. You can contact me, Phil Weathers, on Facebook. Friend me, send me a message. You can email me at weathersphil@yahoo.com. I'll get back in touch with you. And I'll be at a book fair near my hometown of Kings Mountain, North Carolina on March 24th, and I'll have copies of it for sale there.
Okay, and so people can message you on Facebook, and it'll be Phil Weathers, Weathers. Just message Phil Weathers.
That's correct.
All right. So, do you want to send this off by singing the end?
That's fine. Sounds like a winner.
How about I'll do the beginning, Phil does the middle, and Warren finishes up.
Sound good to me.
All right. And in the end,
the love you take
is equal to the love you make. Do, 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 do.